Good evening, everybody.
I'm here.
I think we got everybody here, Travis. The regular meeting of the Windsor Heights City Council is called to order. Roll call.
Susan Scaries,
Here.
Joseph Jones,
Here.
Mike LaFredo,
Present.
Mike Jones,
Here.
and Teresa Harms.
Here.
Okay, please join me in a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Susan Scaries,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Next item is public hearing on amending the current budget year for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. Motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
No second?
I got one from Mike. Yep.
Okay. Roll call.
Susan Scaries,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
We had any public comment or public input, Travis?
I have not seen anything unless Rochelle has.
No, I have not.
Dennis? Okay, is there anyone on the call who would like to make a public comment on the current budget? Hearing none, public hearing closed. Motion,
Move to
So
close.
Second.
roll call.
Susan Scaries,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Next item is consideration of resolution 2021-24, amending the current budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021.
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
So this is Teresa. I just want to confirm we are, the amendment is for 48,327, Rochelle.
Yes,
Okay.
that the whole entire amendment actually gives us revenue in the amount of 4837.
Correct. Okay. Yep. And so that just goes into our ending or our reserves or whatever.
Yeah.
I can't think of the right word, but okay. That's all. I just wanted to confirm that was, it's a net positive at the end of the day into the city's account. Thank you.
It is, yes.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Susan Scaries,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Next item is consideration of resolution 2021-25, approving the fiscal year 2021 budget amendment balance transfers for the city of Windsor Heights.
Move to approve. I'll second.
Discussion?
Can I just make sure that I understand, is the lost for like the police communications and fire communications, that's just a total of 137, correct? It's not 274?
It is 274 is the cost of Westcom. I just have to transfer it into two separate areas in the into the budget.
That answer it,
Thank you.
Susan?
Thank you.
And
Any
that, if
further-
that, oh, I
Go
was
ahead.
just gonna add to that, and maybe Chad wants to chime in, but I think that that's our or maybe Rochelle, it's our 3-year cost or 2-year cost for the upfront. Rochelle's shaking her head.
It
yeah.
is, yes. So we
Yeah.
won't vote again until 2024. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chad, but I think it's 2024 is when we budget again for it.
That's correct. And actually, right before this meeting, West Des Moines just approved our 2080 and MOU. So
Oh,
So Chad, when does that start then?
the 2080 goes into effect July 1, but that's for all the agencies in Westcom. It's a new management agreement. And then our MOU brings us online on the Westcom system at the latest September 1. And we're hoping to have maybe a little earlier than that even.
Okay. Thank you.
no further discussion. Roll call.
Susan Skiris,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is public forum, set aside for comments from the public. Business other than what's on the agenda, we will not take any action. Please state your name, address, and keep your comments to no more than 5 minutes. Do we have anyone on? I see Shelley. Would you like to make comments?
Oh,
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
My name is Shelley Scooster. I live at 6520 Forest Court. I have been contacting City Hall and City Council members for about 2 weeks now because I'm concerned about public safety on our street during the University Avenue construction. First, let me start off by saying my husband and I are in support of the construction project, and we are very much looking forward to the investment in our community. My concerns about our poorly executed detour are as follows. One, why is no one on call with Public Works or the city? Why are my emails and voicemails so often unreturned? It's my understanding that taxpayers pay for cell phones for certain city officials. And I would like to know why those phone numbers are not publicly listed on the website. Second, our house has sustained property damage during this poorly executed detour because of the large semis and trucks flying down Forest Court. The city administrator said in an email to me that it is common for low-hanging wires to be yanked out of houses. I would like to know why there could not be some sort of preventative action to raise those low-hanging wires if we know there is going to be an excessive amount of semis and construction vehicles driving down residential streets. My third question and concern is, why can't Public Works prioritize detours to be routes that have sidewalks? Forest Court does not have any sidewalks. It is virtually impossible for my family, my young kids, to take a bike ride safely. In fact, I can barely walk down the street without almost getting hit by a car. I was told by the Public Works Director that we should not be riding bikes along the curb, that we should instead be riding our bikes 12 feet into people's front yards. My kids have training wheels. There are trees and landscaping. I don't expect my kids to ride in people's yards safely. That's not accessible for my kids or anyone with a wheelchair or stroller. So I would like to know why Public Works could not prioritize a detour along streets that have sidewalks. And finally, I'm not sure how long this construction project is slated to last at its most recent update. I believe the last I heard was the 11th. Whatever that case may be, I would like City Council, Public Works, Police, I would like you all to consider immediately rerouting large trucks and semis to not be driving along Forest Court. Those are my questions and concerns. I appreciate you listening.
Thank you. Chad, any response? Dalton, Dennis?
We'll take those comments and questions into account, and we'll have a response to Shelley and the rest of the council tomorrow.
Thanks, Shelley. Do we have anybody else on the call?
I see Lauren Campbell has her hand raised and Karen Eshelman.
Yeah, okay. Lauren, go ahead.
Hi there, Lauren Campbell, 1004 wanted to take a moment to talk about the parade. I know that there is a item on the consent agenda about the fees for the parade, but I wanted to take a moment and talk about options for council's entry into the parade. Dennis, is this the right spot where I should talk about those options?
Go ahead.
Okay. In previous years, we've done a few different things as far as council being in the parade. We have sometimes provided signs, and council has used their own vehicles. There's also been times prior to my parade involvement that there were golf cars rented by the city that the council members could decorate and use as part of the parade as well. And so there are some options that together with the chamber, we could collaborate. For example, if you guys want to rent golf cars, we can help coordinate that, save you guys actually the delivery fee. But there are, of course, some rules and stipulations, laws around campaign use versus council, just as being a part of the parade. And so there's a few different options of renting golf cars, letting individuals register themselves. But I thought I would start the conversation and then be able to answer any questions as you guys decide what you want to do.
Lauren, have you got all of that in an email?
I do. Yeah, I've got it kind of typed up of some different options. I'd be happy to forward that to you guys if you want to decide as a city what you want to do via email. That's just fine as well.
I think that would be very helpful. Got a calling there.
Can we make I don't know that it's on our calendar, if we can make a decision on that tonight, or maybe we could just give I don't know that we have to take a vote, but if we can have a conversation and give some direction. I don't know if that's anywhere on our agenda to do so, unless we pulled it out of the consent agenda.
Well,
Dennis,
not having anything in front of us, I don't know as we're in a position to respond completely as to what we want to do.
If the council's comfortable with leaving it at a volunteer basis, so if the city's going to pay for it, as has been in the past, then we just have to avoid any connection to campaigning or political organizations. So if the city is going to pay for it and you want to participate as a city councilor, let me know that you want to participate after Lauren sends the information through, and I'll take care of the rest. But if you choose not to participate as a member of the city council because you want to participate as a candidate for office, which is common in 4th of July parades, then just send me an email saying you'd prefer to do it that way rather than as the city council. And then that'll give us a head count and an expense for Lauren so she can order carts. If that's acceptable to everybody, I think that's probably the easiest way to do it.
I agree.
Thank you, Dennis.
Who was next? Travis?
Well, we had Karen. It looks like her hand is down. We have Cody Crandall.
Okay.
Folks, yep, Cody Crandall here. I'm at 1018 67th Street. I've been sending out some emails the past few weeks here about some nuisance issues over at 1010 67th Street. I was just hoping to get an update on some of those issues. The dog feces smell, the junkyard that he's running over there, that A-frame pillar, that industrial pillar, the nails sticking through the wall, the junk on the property and whatnot. I was just wondering what of those concerns have been addressed so far, if they have.
Hi, Cody. This is Dennis. The a number of the concerns that I read through the email have been addressed in other ways already, like the burning. And I think that there was some other things that were addressed by the Public Safety Department. I have dispatched our nuisance investigation team at Safe Building, and they're going to compile a complete report for us to use in pursuing enforcement through the process that's laid out in Code 50.05, abatement of nuisance. So we have a very strict process we have to follow. I want to make sure we have the information correct and comprehensive. And when I have that report, I'll be giving that to the council, and then we'll also be pursuing enforcement.
Okay, awesome. Is there a timeline on that?
I have to talk with Safe Building. They were set on this task last Thursday. So we'll see if they've had a chance to get out to the property this week yet. And then how many days after that they'll need to write the report. I'll definitely update you and the council when I hear back from Safe Building on a tentative completion date.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, there's definitely some safety concerns there. Like with those screws are sticking through the fence at least 2 inches there. If I were to fall up against one of those, that would stab me pretty well. So I'd like to get, those larger concerns taken care of, as well as the feces smell, because I still can't stand in my backyard without smelling dog feces. So I'd really like to be able to enjoy that.
Mayor, I have Colleen with her hand raised.
Okay, Colleen, go ahead. I was just searching for the hand up and I didn't see it, so go ahead.
Hi, this is Colleen Kelleher, 6529 Colby. I would just also like to say that I am most unhappy with the manner in which the traffic has been rerouted through to avoid the 66th Street intersection. Now, Colby isn't as highly traveled, as well traveled as due to the detour as Forest Court is, but Forest Court has winding curves, and so that slows people down somewhat, although I have seen many people roll through that stop sign. Colby is a straight shot from 63rd to 73rd, and I actually mentioned to somebody, I wondered when Colby Avenue became a qualifying event for NASCAR, because the speed is significantly higher. People just race right on through. I agree with what the Forest Court resident said, in that you can't walk. People, park in the street, and these other residents, they're people that are angry because they are detoured. They do not yield to other cars or pedestrians. You can't take a walk. You can't walk your dog in the neighborhood. It's really sad. And today I went down 64th Street to go to University and realized, well, geez, they really should have closed that, because you can't turn left to get onto University there. They're working on the construction, and so you have to go to the right, and you can then go down 65th south of University, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think it's been addressed very well. I really think the detour should have been to detour people to Hickman and let them come down 69th or 68th or whatever street that they need to get where they need to go. We've put up with this for a couple of weeks now, and I sure hope it's done by the 11th, but I'm telling you, I'm really feeling that the people that voted for this improvement, so to speak, on University Avenue, it's very apparent that they don't live in this area and they're not impacted by it. And it is not safe. And I feel like the residents in this part of Windsor Heights are being totally ignored and taken advantage of. So that's all I have. I hope it's addressed soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Colleen.
Dennis, do you have some sort of an update, or someone can brief us on the time frame and when this would end, and if there's any effort to reroute traffic or change that up, or to make any changes based on the concerns that we've received?
We don't have any plans right now, but as I said when Shelley was speaking, we will take those issues and we'll have a response for you. But we are still on track to be complete and reopened on June 11th, which is Friday.
Thank you. I remember you said that now. There's been a lot since then. Thank you.
let me just interject this because I walked up there today, headed towards City Hall and the Public Safety Building. But anyway, that construction project, which seemed like probably a pretty simple thing when we approved it, had become kind of a major project from the looks of it. And they're putting in sidewalks right now, pouring sidewalks. And I guess I'd like to know, we're looking at the 11th, Dennis, you're telling me that. So I'm gonna keep that in mind, but it is a real obstacle, and it's I'll be interested if it comes through on budget as well, because it sure in the heck seems like it's taken them a long time for something that really wasn't real costly. So I'll be interested in that if there's not a major change order from the estimate that we got.
Thanks, Mike. Travis, we got any other hands up?
I do not see any.
Pardon?
I do not see any more hands up.
Okay. I thought I saw Edie's there for a while.
Yeah, yes, it's Edie. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I do want to just give a quick update. We do have a fundraiser going on for the parade, which I'd like to make mention to everyone, to the city, to the residents, and of course to council. We would appreciate your support. I know some of you have already participated, but we are selling cookie dough from Eileen's Cookies in Windsor Heights. And a portion of those proceeds are going directly to cover the costs that the chamber has to help you guys with the parade. So I'd like everyone to consider possibly donating towards that, or just making a donation towards covering the costs of the parade. Also, I would like to mention that we have a business after hours coming up this month on the 17th. It will be held on the patio at Gilroy's. Also, we have a ribbon cutting for Dinner Dispatch this month on the 24th at 4 p.m. That ribbon cutting is in conjunction with 2 other chambers and would love to have the support of the city behind that event.
Edie, is that the one in Apple Valley?
Yes, it is. It's right next to Marco's Pizza.
Okay.
Your sign is up.
That's what I thought.
Thanks, Edie.
Thank you.
There's no other hands up or no other comments from the public. Next item is consent agenda. Motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Susan Skiris,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Next item is new business consideration of resolution 2021-26, approving the fiscal year 2021 year-end balance transfers for the city. Motion
Move
to
to
approve.
approve.
A second.
So moved.
Discussion? Roll call.
Susan Skiris,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Next item is consideration of a contract with J&K Contracting to reconstruct a storm sewer intake in the vicinity of 7123 Del Metro, the amount of $19,500.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
Hey, Travis, can you let me share my screen, please?
Yep, I'm doing it right now here. Okay, you should have that functionality now.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So on the call with us tonight is Brent Ridnour. He lives on the north side of Del Metro. This is the intake, the primary intake that we're talking about reconstructing. There's currently a triple blind connection right here about to this tree. That's pretty bad idea. And you can see that the top on this intake, as it currently sits, is being supported by concrete masonry units, a cinder block essentially, approximately 8 feet back from this ledge to where it drops down into about a 6-foot deep vault. So there's a big 6 by 6 by 6 foot box underneath here where we've got a triple blind connection of storm sewers. So we're not able to effectively inspect or maintain those. On this side of the road, we've got pretty much the same thing. And that one goes back to about right here. So Brent called me up a while ago, and we found this because he wants to widen out his driveway, and he said he does concrete for a living. He knew that he had something kind of weird on his hands. So I went out and looked at it, and he can't widen out his driveway because there's only about 6 inches of fill on top of this 4-inch concrete cap for this storm sewer intake. And so if he were to drive across that repeatedly, it would most certainly fail and his truck would fall into a 6-foot deep hole. So reconstructing this would essentially mean we would have to cut a pipe right here and then drop a new structure in the road. We don't have the manpower or the equipment to do this job in-house. So the name on the agenda is to reconstruct just this north intake right here. That's in the amount of $19,500. When J&K came out, when all the contractors came out, I told them that I wanted to have a price to reconstruct the both of these. This one doesn't currently pose as big of an issue because it's not right off the driveway, but it will eventually be an issue. The price to reconstruct both of those was $30,000. That's pretty comparable. If you just go off like our project pricing from the street projects, that's roughly what we would have paid for this work on our street project. So it's a pretty good price. So if the council is interested in it, there is funding available through the storm sewer capital improvement and the storm drainage capital outlay line item in the operating budget to reconstruct both of these this year. We've not spent nearly as much money in that because we've been rebuilding a lot of those in-house. So there is money to do that. Brent, is there anything you'd like to add? Hey, you're muted, Brent.
Dalton, will that impact the construction doing both of them? The street, it probably will, right?
Yeah, yep. So we'd have to cut out into the street about 4 feet and they'd drop the vault in there.
Okay.
It'd potentially be a port in place.
So if this is approved, you'll inform the residents on the street that this is going to happen and when it's going to happen. And
right, yeah. Yeah, and we would do one side at a time, so we wouldn't have to close the street down.
And approximately how long it will take to complete the project?
About a week per intake, they thought.
Excuse me, I couldn't understand you.
About 1 week per intake, so 2 weeks.
Okay.
All said and done.
That's fine for me, but I don't live on that street, so I'm more concerned about the residents there.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we get notices up to these 4 folks that are right next to it. Obviously, I think we talked to this gentleman when we were out on site once. The resident over here, they were outside and we were poking around, but they had to get going, so they didn't talk to us. But yeah, I mean, we communicate with them what the plan was.
It won't start till after the 11th, I assume.
Till what's that now?
The construction of those sewers won't start till after June 11th.
Yeah, probably not, because they got to mobilize in, call and locate. So yeah, probably not.
It'd be nice if the university was opened up before that happens.
Yeah, I mean, so the extent of this project is going to be stopping well before this crack here. So it would be a minimal. You can get one car through there during the project, and probably 2.
Okay, I mean, I don't disagree with the project or that it needs to be done, but I think timing could be controlled where university is opened up before another east-west street has any obstacles in it.
Okay, yeah, I can, if you guys approve it tonight, I can direct him to not start until Monday, the 14th.
Dalton, can you explain why the other side needs it? I know that you've kind of explained, I don't actually know what a triple blind connection is. But what does the other side have to do with this, and what are you doing the same thing on the other side? Just kind of curious why both sides have to be done. I understand the one side because of the cement work, but the other side, can you help me out there?
Yeah, we stuck a 3D camera in here and took a picture of it. And so the triple blind connection, usually any large bend in a storm or sanitary sewer, or any point where it connects into another pipe, you find some kind of an access point, usually a manhole lid or an intake, so that you can get in there for inspections and maintenance. So we shoved this camera down in there, and this is about 12 feet back, so pretty much right underneath that big tree right here. And you can see we've got a corrugated metal pipe coming in from the north. So that's Mr. Miller's house, Carter Miller, up there on Bel Air. And then we've got a CMP going underneath, RCP going underneath the road here to the south. So our 3 blind connections are 1, 2, and then the flume coming in off the street. And then as far as why the other one needs to be replaced, I don't know if it's so much of a pressing matter, but it's kind of the economies of scale. They're going to be there with all their equipment. They're going to have the locates. They're going to have all their materials and the same crew there. So for another $10,500, they can fix both of them.
I think that in my opinion, that's smart. It's an efficient way to use our dollars to take care of both of them.
Is there an issue with that one, Dalton, or are we just doing preventative maintenance, or kind of, I mean, I understand that you're trying to save money. I'm just trying to understand what is wrong with that one.
Yeah, this one isn't, I got a picture I'm pulling up here. So that intake, I couldn't get a camera down it because there's a kind of an odd drop inside of the structure where I couldn't get the pole mounted camera down in there. But this is what we're looking at. These are these 2 pipes. So these 2 pipes right here are running straight back to the south. You can see the inverts on them aren't at the flow line in the box. So at a minimum, we need to get in there and pour some inverts in this box. And inverts just to make sure the water actually goes into the pipe, it doesn't sit, because that's how you get sediment and stuff like this in the bottom of them. So this should be getting shoveled out every couple of years, and I don't think it has been. So before we could actually get a picture of it, we had to get a skid loader out there, take the whole lid off of it, shovel it out, and then we got the picture. So I guess to answer your question, it's a little bit of a preventative maintenance and a little bit of a kind of economies of scale. Just you pay half the price for the second one. I don't know. It's almost like buy one, get one half off, I guess. But it eventually will need to be done, because whenever any of those pipes have maintenance or we have some kind of obstruction get down in the storm sewer, we got to have some way to get it out. So we've pulled mallets and 2x4s and bricks out of storm sewers before. And if there's no way to get down in there, it'll just start backing stuff up, decrease our capacity in our system.
Thank you.
So Dalton, to sort of summarize, this was, I think, inspired by Mr. Ridnour's project, but what you're telling us is it kind of needs to be done anyway, because you can't really work on these things because there's no manhole.
Pretty much. Yep.
Okay.
Are these on the?
Sorry, go ahead.
You sure? I was going to let you complete your thought.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these, it's kind of a sins of the past that we're playing with on a lot of our storm sewers here. So Bobby has been going out. You've probably seen him around town with the pole mounted 3D camera and the iPad, doing 3D video inspection of every storm structure we have in town. Probably starting Towards the middle of next week, we're going to be looking for some rear yard structures. So knocking on doors, hey, we have permission to enter your backyard. There's supposed to be a storm sewer intake back there. Can we look for it? And so we're just trying to fix these sins of the past as we find them. A lot of them we can fix in-house, and this is one that we can't.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think there's a lot of deferred things that we all recognize have fallen on current groups to do, but I appreciate you doing that. My question was looking kind of into that scope, which is how many more of these exist in the city that you think we're going to have to address? Or do you know that number yet?
He is just about done with all the street inspections, and he hasn't found any more like this.
Okay.
And the ones that he's found that need to be rebuilt, we should be able to do all but a couple of them with staff labor. So there's only one that needs to be completely reconstructed, and a lot of them can just have a total overhaul. But there's a couple that need to be totally removed and replaced, but they're not in. This is an issue because we can't see our pipes. We don't know what's in there. So
sure. Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
We have a motion on the table to.
Hey, Mayor, I just have one question real
ahead.
quick. So once you complete the surveying of all the rest of these, is that then going to be built into the CIP? Is that the plan?
Yeah. Yep.
And then was there anything in the CIP this year? Because I'm assuming these were not. So anything else for storm sewers? I don't have it in front of me right now, so I was just curious.
I could look into that. I could look into that and get back to you on that after the meeting. But stuff as far as like rebuilding specific intakes, no, I'm pretty sure there was not.
Okay.
But there was money budgeted in the operating budget for stuff like this.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that so you guys are doing your assessment now, which is great. I'm glad that that's being done. So we'll have a plan for the reconstruction and the associated costs to do those.
Right. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Dalton, we did a sewer study not that long ago with Bolton Mink, and they identified, as I recall, it was like $15 million, and it wasn't even a complete study. So that's fairly recent.
So the study that Bolton and Mink did was really focusing on capacity issues and not necessarily condition of infrastructure. So do we have enough pipes, and are they big enough to keep people from getting flooded? So we're working towards the same goal, which is good, robust infrastructure, but we're coming at it from two slightly different angles.
Yeah, that's
so
fine.
they kind of work together.
Yeah, I guess the point is there's a lot of needs there.
Yeah, definitely. And then, $30,000.
There were two standalone. There were two standalone projects in the CIP for Washington and Northwest Drive, and then Colby and Forest Court storm sewers.
For 2020?
No, 2025 for the Northwest Drive in Washington, and 2029 for the Colby Avenue and Forest Court.
So $30,000 is no small amount of money, but in the big scope of the stormwater plan, I mean, we're talking $16 million of projects. So in comparison, it's kind of a, I hate to say a pittance, but it does put it into perspective that this isn't a huge project. So you put 10 of these together and it can be a CIP project, but typically a $30,000 storm sewer reconstruction isn't. I guess it depends how you do it, but in the past in Windsor Heights, that has not been a capital improvement plan project. Brent, looks like you got unmuted. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I don't think the council's ever actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but have approved the CIP for at least a year.
Yeah, that is correct. Yep.
So
we have a motion on the table to approve 19.5. Can we?
Dave,
Yes,
I hadn't finished.
I'm sorry.
I think that needs to be done, is the CIP to provide guidance from here forward. I don't know why we're delaying that. So anyway, so go ahead, Dave.
Thanks, Mike. We got a motion on the table for 19.5 to construct the north one. Do we want to, somebody want to pull that one back and we go for both of them? At, 29.5 or $30,000. If not, okay. Roll call.
Susan Skerrys,
So this is for
19.5.
5. And was I one that seconded that, the 30,000 or seconded this?
yeah, the motion was by Teresa, second was by you, Susan.
Okay.
So I'm getting a little mixed up myself. So we're not voting on the $30,000 doing both of them?
No, we have a motion on the table for the one for 19,500.
Okay, so then there can be a second motion to do the 30,
No.
right?
Not until it comes back again. So if we get the removal of the motion in the second and a new motion to do both of them at the same time for approximately $30,000, then we can vote on it and we're good to go.
I guess I'd have to look. I didn't think the motion was just for, I thought it was just a motion. I didn't know that there was a specific.
Well, motion to approve and the one on the table was for 19.5, Mike.
So if others are supportive of doing both, please indicate your preference. I'll be happy to withdraw my motion.
I am supportive of doing both.
Teresa, I would appreciate you changing your motion.
All right.
I'll
I
pull my
will
second.
withdraw. Okay, and then I would move to approve for both projects at the 30,000 X number dollar amount for both of those on Del Monte and the 7100 block.
And I'll second that.
Thank you, folks. Roll call.
Susan Skerrys,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Thanks, folks. The next item is consideration of College Drive improvements. Change order number 3 for sidewalk repair at 7804 College Drive in the amount of $24,159.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
I guess I actually do.
Okay, go ahead, Susan.
So is this an error that kind of explain to me what happened? Because it shows that 7708 Drive to meet accessible van requirements and then to install sidewalk at 7804 College. So is 7708 Drive, is that College Drive as well?
Yes, yep.
And then, so kind of what happened, whose mistake is this? Is this our mistake? Is this construction mistake? Is this engineering mistake? I guess $25,000 or whatever it is for the driveway. So 11,500. I'm just kind of curious what transpired that we now have to change things around a bit.
I don't know if I would really say that there's any mistake here on the 7704 or 7708, I'm sorry. So the resident has a really low riding vehicle because it's outfitted with handicap accessibility. It's one of those like Brown Ability vans, you know? And so the driveway, it all meets standards, it all meets SUDAS, it all meets specs, but they scrape when they pull in and out a little bit. And so they've requested that we lower it. And it's going to cost enough when we lower it that it should be approved by the council. It needs to be approved by the council. So, I mean, it was designed before we knew they had a handicap van. And so to drop the the sidewalk or raise the street, it was a little late in the game. We didn't find out until we were about to remove their driveway. And so we made some accommodations. We ground down the curb a little bit, and we've done everything we can to get it to not scrape. It's just, it's still scraping. So you don't have to do the change order for the, yeah, I guess either of them, but I think that they would appreciate it.
I'm just curious. I know that this had been a discussion with, I believe there's 2 different handicapped vehicles that are on College, probably right in that same vicinity. So just kind of curious, when you said that prior to you pulling out the driveway that you found out about this lower accessible vehicle, why were plans not changed at that point in time, knowing this, to maybe save us a little bit of money or to save them some hassle?
So we did modify it to what we could without getting up into their driveway and shaving it down even more. And it worked for one of them and it didn't work for the other. So Justin, do you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, I guess it was designed to meet what we're supposed to. So I went out and measured that vehicle. The vehicle only sits off the ground 3.5 inches. So it's nothing that you see every day. So it's just one of those things where it just hits in one spot perfectly, that it just bottoms out.
And I hate to harken back to the Ghost of Christmas Past here, but this is the same issue that we had with the driveways on 63rd Street during the sidewalk project. The houses just sit so much higher than the street that given the flat panel of sidewalk that we're required to maintain as it goes through the driveway, there's going to be an abrupt change in elevation and then flatten out and then abrupt again. And so, I mean, it meets standards, so you definitely don't have to do it. But I think given the circumstances, it's probably the right thing to do.
Hey, Dalton?
Dalton,
Yeah.
Does the vehicle rug on the driveway?
Yeah, the frame hits just in front of the rear axle.
Well, then I think we need to take care of it.
Dalton, I was going to ask if you had any knowledge of whether or not it scraped before the project. So their old driveway was perfectly fine?
Yeah, the old driveway was fine because the sidewalk as it went through the driveway just followed the elevation profile of the driveway. So it didn't have to flatten out. So they didn't scrape.
Well, I appreciate you bringing this to us. I definitely think it needs to be done. I will go on record in saying that meeting standards when it comes to these sort of things is never great for people with disabilities. It's always the bare minimum is what the standard is, and the bare minimum is usually not always the best option for folks who need to have accessibility and get around. So I'm glad that we have you bringing this to us to talk about. So I'll be supporting this.
I agree.
I guess my concern is you brought up 63rd Street and that we had something going on there. And it seems as if we're not learning from some of our mistakes, or kind of, as Joseph said, you know, the bare minimum doesn't always work. And I just am concerned that if we continue this, that we're not learning from our mistakes. And that's been kind of proven here over and over again. And B, we are not communicating effectively with our people, with our residents, for them to say, hey, look, you know, this is our vehicle. I understand that this meets the minimum requirements, but it's not going to work with our vehicle. So again, I am in full support. I think that this is the right thing to do, but we also need to start learning from our mistakes. And this is kind of an $11,500 mistake that I wonder if it could have not been done and if we would not be paying this out at this point in time.
Thank you.
I would
Any
echo
further
the same.
discussion? Otherwise, we've got a motion on the table.
And Susan, I
Yes.
think the point's well taken, that perhaps before the construction is the residents be surveyed if there's any handicap accessibility issues for any of the residents of that address.
This is Teresa. I would, yep, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. I just would echo that as well. I know we dealt with that, challenges with the sidewalk on 64th Street. We've dealt with and had questions from a lot of residents who brought these forward. And the standard answer that we consistently get is, well, we meet standards. It's incredibly frustrating when we know that there are real issues with residents that have disability issues, and that we're not thinking about those beforehand. And so it's a growing frustration for me. And so I like Councilmember Lafredo's recommendation that maybe we need to be doing some proactive disability or special needs types of requests as we go into the planning processes, so we don't get caught later in this situation where it's costing us more money. Much like with the storm sewers, you want to be preventive and proactive. We should be doing this on all of our projects, not just the one that wants to be done today, and using that. It needs to be our mantra and our how we approach projects. So I very much support that. I also was involved with a neighbor at 7804 on College Drive. I do believe there was an error associated with that. So Dalton, do you want to speak to that?
And are you speaking about the Cravens there?
I am. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I don't know how much there is to say about that one. So their sidewalk going up to their house was never ADA compliant in the first place. It was at about a 17.5% running slope, anywhere from a 2 to a 9% cross slope, which is about 4.5 times the allowable limit. And so when we dropped the profile of the road down, we dropped the sidewalk down with it to maintain that cross slope and running slope that's required by ADA. And so when we're going to connect their sidewalk going back into their property, we told them that we can either remove the sidewalk further back onto their property, or we could put a step in. And they said that they would prefer that we remove it further back into their property to kind of feather out that grade change. So the crews went out to do that work on a Saturday back in December, and they kicked the crews off the site. And so now, instead of just connecting into what was, we're removing their sidewalk up to almost to their front door. And we're going to take it west instead of down to the road. We're going to take it west to not have to catch so much elevation and tie it into the public sidewalk out at the street.
I want to thank Dennis and the team for coming out and working with the Cravens on that, because there certainly were points of contention and miscommunication along on that project, as I understand. So once Dennis got out there, it certainly made a big difference. So just wanted to thanks for that.
Thanks, Reese. Any further comments? Roll call.
Susan Skiris,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Mike Lafredo. Mike Lafredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Next item is consideration of an application to the Iowa Department of Transportation for grade crossing surface repair, the amount of $31,082. Not on the crossing down there on 73rd.
Yes. Yep. The one down there by the YMCA.
I'll second the motion.
Discussion?
I have a motion by Teresa and a second by Susan, Mayor.
Any discussion on it? Roll call.
Susan Skiris,
So just, we're using road use tax. We're taking money out of the road use tax reserves and putting them, or keeping it, or however, we're maintaining the minimum balance of 31,000 and change in a fund somewhere so that we would have that payment. Is that kind of what I'm reading?
Yeah, pretty much, or we can budget for it every year, but the easiest way would just to make sure we have that. And Rochelle, correct me if I'm wrong here, but to make sure that we've got that minimum fund balance to cover the expense, because we don't know exactly when it's going to happen or what fiscal year it'll happen.
You are correct, Dalton.
Thank you. And I'll vote yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yep.
and Teresa Harms.
Yep.
Next item is consideration of resolution 2021-27. Resolution setting non-union employee pay ranges. Motion to approve.
Dave,
So
I
moved.
couldn't understand
To start-
what item are you talking about?
Item E.
You're not coming through to, at least to me, very well.
Item E, Mike.
Okay. Okay.
I'll move to approve to start the conversation.
I'll second to start the conversation.
Discussion.
Okay, so Susan Skiris. Or did you want to do a roll, Mayor?
No.
Okay, just for discussion. Okay.
This is just for discussion right now, so.
Mr. Mayor,
So
maybe,
is
maybe it'll
this
help
for-
get this started if I give a brief introduction.
Probably,
Please.
yes, go ahead.
Okay, the council received a three-pronged recommendation back on May 17th, and the discussion around the pay ranges and the recommended wage rates for fiscal year 2022. The general discussion was about having them revised lower to reflect the council's desire to not be so competitive with the labor market and also be a little bit more fiscally responsible with how this is going to be paid for. So what you see this evening are the three components split up into three approval requests. I took the Pontifex recommended pay ranges and reduced those by 10 to 15% throughout the pay ranges except for one, and that would be the ASC in the Public Safety Department. As the ranges serve as the basis for the setting employee wages, they're also a major component in hiring. A good example would be right now we have a vacant fire captain position, and under the recommended pay range, which is reduced, that fire captain will start at the rate of $66,672 for an annual salary. So as a reminder, the recommended ranges this evening are below the market average for our competitors as recommended by Pontifex. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Why the 10%?
The 10% is one that is a standard range for retention in terms of if somebody is planning on leaving a position for another position in another organization, 10% is the accepted standard for something that you'd like to see as an improvement in compensation to motivate you to make that jump. So I did not want to press the envelope and go to 20%, because then what you're doing is basically saying to employees, go ahead and leave. And in terms of retention, I'd like to stay at that 10% and at the most the 15%, so we can retain the good employees that we currently have.
And why not the ASC?
When I ran the spreadsheet on the ASC position, it moved the starting pay range so far lower that I did not feel confident we could hire a replacement for that position if we had to go out in the market today.
My sort of final quick question is, well, I don't know if it's a quick question. Philosophically, what is the purpose of the position of the public safety director, as opposed to just having a chief of police?
That person is also the fire chief. So he's wearing two hats.
But you want to pay a fire captain $66,000 as well, but also pay the public safety director the recommendation. I mean, if just looking at the midpoints, so that adds up to about $190,000 for two people. But one of them as a captain, would it not just make more fiscal sense to just have a police chief and a fire chief?
Well, you also are missing the police captain position. So Chad, you can jump in here and describe what the police captain and the fire captain job responsibilities are. The council did approve those job descriptions back in the fall, I think.
Yeah, so remember the span of control, you're typically looking at best case scenario, no more than 5. Our full-time fire personnel, there's 6 plus 20 to 25 part-time paid on-call people. And then my role in particular, I supervise the police lieutenant, the police captain, and then all 31 of those fire people. And the fire captain would put a first line supervisor over those personnel back there to reduce that span of control and be able to give more attention to the first line supervisor role in the fire department. You certainly could hire a fire chief and a separate police chief, but I would venture to say that your prices are going to be significantly higher, because I would bet that you're not going to find a fire chief for $66,000.
I would concur. When we looked at those separately before we made the merger of the position, that was the most significant difference was the associated cost by having a fire chief and a police chief, and that there was just cost savings in having that in one position with the city our size.
Your discussion?
So Dennis, just a question for you. So as I'm looking at these 3 separate agenda items, so I guess my question is if we approve figure B with these pay ranges, but we don't approve the increased request for funding, and that I'm hypothetically, you get the amount of resources that were budgeted for this year. I'm assuming that you will make do with trying to figure out how to make that work within your budget.
I will attempt to make whatever you come up with work, of course. The importance of and the reason I separated these 3 things is because they're different. They're all different things, and they're separate components of an overall comprehensive compensation plan. The pay ranges are going to be the basis for how we retain and attract. And so, as I mentioned earlier, the fire captain position, Chad is waiting for the pay ranges to be finalized so he can go out and advertise that job for 66,672, the starting range. Now, the candidates that Chad attracts may come in, and there's one that's just exemplary and has 25 years in the fire service. That might justify placing that person above minimum, in between the midpoint or somewhere along that range. That's why that's important. Now, is the Pontifex adjusted salary ranges reasonable? I heard the council say no, and you wanted to temper those ranges with a little bit more fiscal restraint. So I think that this is a good starting point for the pay ranges, and also will give Chad what he needs to hire a person for that fire captain position. That does not mean with approval of these that we have to adjust all of our wages all the way up to fit within this tomorrow. It just gives us a starting point and basically the bones to get a compensation plan in place so that we can move forward. So I'm asking that the council approve this evening so we can get a starting point. I'm asking that the council take a look at the evaluation process and approve that this evening. And then the final action tonight is recommending how much money basically this council wants to approve this evening to start to move positions to match up with these pay ranges.
Thank you, Dennis.
Going back to people who were here before me and who have a greater understanding of the creation of the public safety director position then, was it anticipated that in a certain amount of time that some sort of secondary command staff would be added?
Yes, it was, Mike. Yes, Mike, it was.
And thanks, Dave. I would just echo that because it was actually created before I came on. And then when I came on, there was another conversation about whether or not to keep it that way or go back to having two separate positions when we were in the process of hiring Chad. And so, but that had always been part of the conversation is that you potentially would need someone help managing because there's so many staff for the fire department. And it's just, I mean, there's no business that that has like that number of employees that they report to in order to do it effectively.
I think from what I understand, Chad was the one that brought back this fire captain position. It was a couple of years ago and it has been approved and adopted by the council twice now, maybe 3 times in the budget.
That's correct. And this is
At one time it was a fire lieutenant, and as things changed, it became a fire captain. Any further discussion?
So if we approve this, the first one, then we're going to the employee compensation, and that's something completely different, or the compensation and performance evaluation program. So that's something completely different than what we would approve right here.
Yes.
And then the other one that we could approve instead of the one that we're currently discussing, which is 2021-27, would be G, the non-union employee compensation. Am I correct?
27 is the resolution to set the non-union employee pay ranges.
Okay.
Then 28 is the compensation performance evaluation program. So those are two completely separate. The one we're talking about is 27, which is setting the pay ranges.
Okay, because I'm confused here because I thought Mr. Lafredo and Ms. Harms asked about doing a lump sum and giving you a lump sum of money, and then Dennis, you deciding who it goes to. So
That's not in this particular deal, Susan. That will come up
Susan.
later.
Well,
Pardon me
that's
for
in like
interrupting,
letter
but
G.
option 2 that Dennis has in there is putting the amount that council approves in the hands of the administrator to distribute among those 10 people.
Yes, these are separate issues. The pay ranges are the map. The evaluation is how the map's going to be updated every year. And then the last item, which does include an option for the lump sum, as I listen to the council as best I can on Monday nights. And that was a joke, but that is going to be where we place the star where it says you are here on the map, if that's a fair analogy.
All this one is motion to set the ranges from start to excellent for the non-union salaried employees.
I think it'll be really important for everybody to understand that these will be the new ranges for what, if people are not in now, then Dennis will be working over the course of a period of time to get people in these ranges. That'd be number one. And that as new positions are hired, that they would be within these ranges. So it doesn't mean that if you're outside of this range, you move forward today, depending on when we get to letter G and decide what that amount is. It just means that these are the ranges for which Dennis would work off when he is hiring people, or anybody within the city is hiring staff. This would be the new range for any job we might post.
That's a very good analogy. Thank you, Teresa.
And so it follows that if we do not agree with these ranges, that they will be used to justify pay raises in the future based upon them. Right?
You'll have to say that one more time, Mike. I didn't understand.
These ranges, even though if we don't agree with them, these ranges will be used to likely justify future pay raises.
No.
They won't?
If the council does not approve these ranges, then I have nothing to work with and I'll have to start over.
Okay. Well, I will hold you to that, Dennis, if that is what you're telling me. If you're saying that these ranges that we're talking about tonight, you will not at some point down the line say to us or future councils that, you know, so-and-so, look at this range, so-and-so's paid this, they should be getting paid, you know, more.
That might have to do with an evaluation program, Mike.
Oh, well, that's a different number we're talking about.
But they're still within the range.
Got you.
Listen, we're always going to try to get our employees the market rate wage level. And if on the third item this evening, with regard to compensation, if the council decides that they don't want to go with one of my recommendations and they have one that's significantly lower financially, I'm going to have to make that work. And more than likely, that means some people aren't going to get into the pay ranges. But then when next year rolls around, I might say to you, hey, we have a lieutenant pay range here. This is what it is. And this is what I'm proposing for the lieutenant's position. It may still not get him or her to that pay range, but I think it's important that the council always understand what the established range is when they're making a decision on wage levels, wage rates.
Dennis, I can make a couple comments on this whole thing. Number one, the unionized people settled at 3.5%, I think. Is that correct?
I think when the unions were initiated, the police and the fire, there was a significant adjustment to those positions entering into the contract. And then the contract was a bargained and negotiated 3.5%, I think. Chad, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I do know that's what happened with the fire and EMTs. And more than likely, that's what's going to happen with the public works employees. Their bargaining unit is going to come in and they're going to start by using their own comps, just like we have.
Okay. Okay. That's, as I understand it too, Dennis.
So this, just as clarification, I want to make sure that we are all on the same page, because I think this is important, that this is not just an annual wage adjustment. This is not just, what are we going to increase people? This is realigning the wages for these non-union positions to pay scales that are competitive within the market. And the council has adopted a mission that says we want to be at the average or near the average so that we can be competitive. And me understanding that if we can get to within about a 10 or 15% of those other positions we're competing with, it's going to make it difficult for our employees to want to look elsewhere, barring
Why not 15?
Other issues.
Can I go back to what I was starting?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. No, this is a discussion. I like the option 2 thing is determine how many dollars the council is willing to put into this year's compensation increases. And oftentimes, the higher paid employees, like the CEO or the administrator in this case, and the management people receive even a smaller percentage. I'm not suggesting this, but a smaller percentage than the rank and file because they make more to begin with, so the amount is larger. Okay, I'm not suggesting that, but I'm suggesting that looking at this city and the growth, and I don't think there's any growth that I can tell. I mean, I saw your graph. That I don't know how you got that, but anyway, I would start from the initial point, and I know it's not exactly what you want, a 3.5 to 3.75 increase. Then get into the other facets of your recommendation. And I don't mean across the board on that. I mean, give that sum of money to the staff led by the administrator to distribute that total amount for this next coming up for the wage right now. And then with regard to the other components, and I think they're good ideas, but I have some, some specificity to the questions that I have on them. So, but that's what I would say initially is to look at a 3.5 to 3.75 increase. And again, if you see inequities among those that 10-person group here, the positions, then that gives you a chance to rebalance that.
Mike Jones, you were going to say something? Mike, are you finished?
I finished with that part of it. I've got comments on the other components that Dennis has.
If you're referring to me,
Yeah.
Dennis, then if some are using 90 and some are using 85, you said 20 was too much. Why not just 15 then?
I really like the 10%. And then to explain the Public Works Director's position, I did the 10% on that calculation on that position and that pay range. And in looking at it and listening to the comments from the council over the past 3 or 4 months, I still thought that was a little high and it was too big a jump. So I applied 15% to that one position. And then I did go back to the Pontifex and use that range for the police ASC. Sometimes when you do these things, if you just apply numbers, they don't always come out and they don't feel good. So I had to also use some of my own judgment in terms of that. And I thought that this was a good compromise between using the 10, the 15 and staying with the Pontifex numbers.
Well, I don't think it's too high, in my opinion. I mean, I think you look at any study, the Public Works Director is substantially underpaid, really by any metric. So
what are you suggesting then, Mike?
I guess I'm suggesting to bring this to a close. I think just across the board, the range is be 85% of the Pontifex studies.
Thanks, Mike. We have on the table just a motion to consider or talk about it. Can we get a motion to approve?
Can I ask another question here? So I'm
Yes.
looking at the Public Works Director, the minimum is 90,296. The Public Safety Director is 91,404. And there is a distinct difference between the number of supervision or the number of employees supervised. So I'm kind of curious why there's $1,000 difference in pay when the Public Safety Director has a lot of legal liability as well. So the Public Safety Director, can you explain how much that was from the Pontifex part?
It's 90% of the Pontifex pay range minimum. Now that does, Susan, you're right that does play a part in this, in the number of people supervised. There's a whole handful of considerations when they do this, but the most important consideration is how does this relate to the other positions in your comparable number? And so all of these other communities have their numbers for their people. And I think that this is a good representation of adjusting for those smaller components that you've talked about, while also remaining competitive with those communities and not being equal to those communities. So that's why you see this closeness, I would say. Also, you'll notice that the finance director is at 91,202, mainly because the competition within the comparable range value the finance director position a little bit higher.
So I guess for me, the legalities of what the public safety director has to go through, and he's making basically the same amount as the finance director who's not supervising anyone. I guess I can't wrap my head around how we're coming up with this stuff. And I understand Pontifex says this, and this, but admittedly, he did not take into account the scope of the responsibilities, the scope of the duties. Just because I know kind of the public works departments in Johnston, I know people that work there, there's 156 miles of road that person's responsible for. And he has 30 some people under his supervision with 2 supervisors under that, so I guess for me, these numbers are a little skewed as far as the legal responsibility that, say, the public safety director has versus what the finance director has. And I am not taking away from the work that these people do. They do a great job. I'm looking at it as positions, not the people. So for me, the legal legalities of just how often Chad would, as the public safety director, would go to court, that I just can't really understand that there's only $1,000 difference when he's supervising 30 people, or I'm throwing a number out there, and the public works director is supervising 6, and the finance director is supervising nobody. So that's kind of my concern.
Can I go back on this again? I'm going to reiterate what I kind of already said. I think council's job really is to determine how many dollars of taxpayer money are willing to put forth for this initial compensation. This is just for this coming year. And if you want to do it by percentage, I threw out a couple of them, but then I think it's up to Dennis and the 10 people or 9 people, whatever there are, to work that out. And they take that on themselves to figure out how that money should be used. And that's how I see it being done. I don't want to get into the weeds on this.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, though, this is the adjusted salary ranges that we will be using this for X amount of years, not just this year, X amount of years. And the goal is to make sure everybody gets to at least the minimum, if not to the midpoint. Is that kind of what no? So then
I think, to me, my goal is to represent the residents of Windsor Heights and the limitations on the revenue coming in and the number of residents, and use those dollars wisely. And there's a lot of appreciation for all of our employees, and I'm certainly a big cheerleader for all of them. But there's some reasonableness because they're not my dollars, not your dollars, they're not Dennis's dollars. They are the residents. I guess I'm a resident too. But anyway, that's what we're talking about here. And especially if Dennis, you can answer this for me, please. If we want to also consider the other 2 components of the merit system, then I think that needs to come into play now rather than after this initial thing is done.
So Can I,
Because that would have a big impact. I mean, up to 5% additional.
I guess for me, this is just confusing to me as somebody who was a state employee, that I knew my salary range, and this is throwing out numbers, was from 30,000. And when I topped out, I was at 60,000. So I knew the end of my maximum. I knew my maximum, and I knew what my starting was. So I would assume that that would be how this salary range would go, that my minimum, say I'm the city clerk, I'm going to make at minimum 68,101. And at maximum, when I've reached, you know, my maximum years, going through having great evaluations, then my maximum would be 95,342. But now we're saying we're not going to, as a city clerk, I could still be making my $55,000 that I'm making currently, even though the Pontifex, even though the minimum, the salary range that we as council are approving says that my minimum wage would be 68,000. So I guess for me, this is my confusion, and Mike Jones kind of brought this up as well. That's where I'm stuck at. I'm not understanding. So we have this down on paper, but we're not going to use this for the salary ranges.
I'm trying to predict what the council is going to vote. And yes, in a perfect world, Pontifex is saying that your salaries are way low. You need to adjust to be competitive. So they gave the council a pay range to adopt. Then the council should go and say, okay, we're moving everybody to the proper place on the ranges. Approved. But to do that in 1 year, and with the council's, one of the council's concerns was the fiscal ability to do that and sustainability. I'm saying tonight that I don't have an intention to try to go from point A to point B. And I think the number was a significant number, was like $100,000 to go from here to where Pontifex said we should be. I'm saying, let's get ourselves closer to these pay ranges, and let's make adjustments over a longer period of time. And I think when you look at the third item tonight, the one that we have been spending most of the time talking about, even though we're on the first one, is two options. You can try to get to an adjusted wage scale that I have modified from what Pontifex has come up with, that it's much lower, so that it's not such a hard fiscal impact on the budget for next year. Or you can just decide to choose a lump sum of money along with the added benefits of the time off or the holidays and the short-term disability, and I will make it fit within that number. I will be the bad guy that says to one employee, you're going to get this increase for next year, and another employee, you're going to get this increase next year.
Dennis, the 28,000 on that hybrid model, option 2, what percentage of increase is that? I would say that's close to probably 4, at least 4%.
It's 43% lower than the original recommendation.
Oh, I understand that. I'm not asking that. How much is it over the current wage? How much greater is it in percentages? Because I know what it is for 3.5%, and I know what it is for 3.75. So I would imagine that 28,000 that's in that option 2 is over 4%.
Well, Mike, remember, it's not going to be across the board. I'm going to decide
Right.
who
No,
gets
I
what.
understand, but it's
So
still,
I don't know if you can reach 4%, but if you look, I think at that memorandum, we're talking about a total adjustment in the general fund of only 16,000 and $12,000 in the streets fund. And I think if you just do that 16,000, the math on the 16,000, it's less than 1% of the overall budget. So
Dennis,
yeah, it's not that big a deal.
I'm talking about the total increase for the 10 positions is 28,000. That's what you have written down here.
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is, what percentage is that? I'm not worried about where the source comes from. I mean, it's significant, but that's not our issue right now. And I would contend that that is well over 4% of the, of it's a 4% increase in total. And I like the idea of saying whatever that total that we approve that is given, not given, but it is delegated to you to work with the staff on how that should be distributed. And so that's my thing. I just want to determine how many dollars we're going to put for this, particularly, and if we're going to talk about it tonight, I would appreciate it, is that merit plan and the implications for that. Because that's, those high percentages are more than the raise. So,
If you're talking about the merit plan,
yes,
item 2, that has the chart that says you cannot exceed a certain percentage,
correct. That's what I'm
you
talking
know, that's a fail-safe, because ultimately the council gets to decide how much money they're going to devote every year. And they're going to say, you are going to say next year, hopefully, if this gets adopted, we're going to approve $20,000 for non-union employees for the merit. Then Chad and I are going to get together and we're going to figure out where that money is going to go for bonuses to the people that are exemplary and perform above the average.
Well, did you get a chance to read my email to you?
Yes.
Okay. I think it's you're splitting too many hairs trying to, because I don't think you can evaluate to that tight of those type of options. And I'd like to see that and how you would do that anyway, the procedures and the performance objectives, how those are written. But be that as it may, yeah, I just think those options are pretty rich because it's not, in my opinion, somebody that I recommended 3 options, does not meet, meets, and exceeds. And in my mind, meets, even on your scale that you presented here, well, I mean, that doesn't deserve any merit pay. I mean, that's kind of the minimum, is that meets. And then beyond that, I can see that there's some merit that could certainly go to people that have shown that they've gone way above, whether it's just 1 level exceeds or 2 levels. But to meet expectations, I think that's just, if you don't meet expectations, I think you're on the verge of being maybe not retained. So,
Mike, we need to get the motion on the pay ranges taken care of. We can keep talking about this as we move to another item. Can I get a motion to approve item E, which is setting the non-employee pay ranges that we've been discussing a little bit?
So moved.
Mayor, you have a motion and a second, I believe, but it was unspecific. It just was to
for
give it,
discussion, I think, Aaron.
correct.
So
yeah, that
we need to
motion,
withdraw that one first and then pull the other one in.
Well, either that or just have Harms and Scaries clarify their motions.
Ladies, would you care to do that so we can move forward?
I'll just withdraw my motion at this moment.
Okay.
I'll withdraw mine as well.
Can I get one to approve the pay ranges as stated in the motion or in the resolution?
so Dave, you're talking about option 1.
No, I'm talking about item E, which is 2021-27, the pay ranges. This has nothing to do with anybody's compensation. This is the pay ranges. That's what the motion, it's on the table. Sorry, Mike, I'm just trying to move through this as best we
Well,
can.
we've got several components to this thing.
But you got 3 different motions. This is the first one that sets the ranges. Then we go into the more specifics.
Dave, I would move that.
Okay.
Where are we, Travis? We got one.
I heard Joseph made the motion, and then Mike Lafredo, did you make the second?
I didn't make any second.
Oh, I thought I heard a second from you. So we just have a motion by Joseph.
Okay. Guess we don't have a second to do that. Motion to table it then, I guess.
No, it dies for lack of support.
Okay. Next item is consideration of resolution 2021-28, which is establishing the non-union employee compensation and performance evaluation program.
Why don't we just have discussion? That way we don't have to be going in and then backing back out because we have no idea what we were committing to.
All right.
Typically, the council will move and support so that there can be discussion and then a vote. If you're saying you just want to have discussion, that means you don't want to vote this evening on what you're going to discuss?
No, what I meant was instead of formally making, going into someone making a motion that's just, say, I move to approve for discussion. Why don't we just have the discussion? And then if we want to move something based upon that discussion.
Okay, I understand. Thank you, Mike.
And item F is out there. What do we want to do? It's the consideration for establishing the compensation performance evaluation program.
I would like to have discussion on this. However, we have to do this. If I have to do a motion, I'm not exactly sure how you want this done. So since there's some confusion,
Usually we would have a motion to approve, then we would have this in a second, and then we would have discussion, and then we would have a roll call and it'll either go forward or not.
I'll do a motion to approve so that we can get this discussion started then.
Okay.
Susan, I'm not sure you need to in order to say what you want. I mean, we're on this agenda item, and I think that's what Mike Jones was trying to avoid. So I think you can just talk about what you want to talk about.
Then I will remove this and we will start from the beginning all over and do what Mike Jones said to do in the first place. So we'll start the discussion.
Picking back up, Mike, you had asked what the $28,000 was. I think that's about 3.85%. I think that is the amount. I think that's around the amount that the percentage.
Mr. Mayor, could I introduce this item?
Yes, you can, Dennis. Please go ahead.
The city doesn't currently have a policy or program in place for adjusting wages from year to year, or an established protocol for annual performance evaluations. The program that you have before you this evening borrows heavily from the program that the city utilized from 2016 to 2018, including the merit bonuses. The merit bonuses are to be determined by the council's budget allocation beginning of every fiscal year, starting with next spring. Those will be based on the schedule that you see at the back of this program for completing performance evaluations, and then department directors and I deciding on where those merit bonuses should go based on the money that the council makes available for that, that bonus. And you can see in this program, there is a formula for how that will be determined between departments. A question Mike brought up about the evaluation levels. The reason that we're proposing 5 is very straightforward, and I'll explain to you where I land on this. First off, failing and failed to improve is a performance evaluation level that would then ultimately probably lead to termination or reassignment to a different position. That is not the same as somebody that might need development within the current structure of their position and job responsibilities. Standard performance is meets expectations, as we have discussed and as we currently have today in our evaluation instrument. An employee that does what they're told or asked to do during that year, does not go above and beyond, meets standard performance, and is the middle of that room. Then under excellent performance, that's the person that does more than just meets expectations, takes initiative to do things that are above and beyond what is just the basic minimum required of them. And then that distinguished performance is reserved for that employee that does something so extraordinary during that year that they should be rewarded for that. That's why I'm proposing 5 instead of 3, which is currently the rating system on the instrument that we have now. The merit bonus calculation chart there on page 3 or 52 of your total packet, that can certainly be adjusted. And if the consensus of the council is to not reward the 3 points to 3.45 points or the 3.5 to 3.99 points for a merit bonus because they are meeting expectations, that's certainly fine. We should modify that. And the percentages there are a cap to protect the city or protect against abuse in case there is some kind of bias for an employee. But ultimately, that total bonus amount will be determined by the council when they allocate the money at the beginning of the budget year. And then the final page there shows what the tentative and proposed schedule is for performing all of these items in conjunction with the budget.
Dennis, I think it's going to be a tough job to differentiate between level 4 and level 5, because level 4, I think, is called excellent. That's pretty good in my book, the terminology, and versus distinguished. And so my critique is that you're probably splitting some hairs there, and but it's got to be evidence-based in terms of objectives and documentation to show that there's a difference between excellent and exemplary. So that's my feeling now. That's why I suggested that there's too many steps there. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess as far as, so I'll start at the beginning where on the merit bonus, number 2, so page 50 or page 1, the employees performing at a meets standard rating for the merit bonus. I don't think that meets standard is what really would bring about a merit bonus to me. I think that the distinguished performance and excellent performance, yes. I don't think that the performance evaluation level of 3 to 3.49 should receive any bonus amount. I guess 3.5 to the almost 4. Does that mean that they're doing a little bit better than like the average that they should be doing just based on their job description, or kind of how is that even going to be easy to figure out what 3.5 is compared to 3? Or I guess for me, that's kind of something that I'm not too sure how, if that would be something that you, Dennis, would have one idea on and say somebody else would have another idea on that. Is there a way that we can keep that so that we know like the number of points on the evaluation equals up to the 3.5, or kind of how would we get to that?
Well, let's address the first comment you made. How about we just change this right here while we're looking at this? This chart should read 3 to 4, not to exceed 2%, 4 to 5, not to exceed 3%, and then the bottom 2, remove those. So there's no 4 or 5%, and there's no 4 to 4.49.
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry.
So on the chart that you see here on page 3 or 52 of the total package,
yep,
the third line down where it says 3 to 3.49,
mm-hmm.
modify that to 3 to 3.99 and make that 2%. Then the drop down one more. So that's 4 to 4.99. And that's not to exceed 3%. And then just remove the bottom two.
But then we're still 3 is standard performance.
But it would be between 3 and 4. And 4 is exceeds, right?
Correct.
So that would be a judgment call for me and the department director. Let's say their average score comes out to be 3.79. Then we could justify, and we would want to justify rewarding that person for that. But if they're at 3 or a 3.1, we may make a judgment call not to award a bonus that year. And the other thing to remember is based on the amount of money that's available for bonuses, it's not just a matter of saying, okay, there's 28 people who got 3 or better, we're going to spread the money over to 28 people. We may only have enough money to reward the top scorers in that range, or not even that range. This is just protecting the city from not exceeding an amount.
Dennis, we're talking about the 10 people that we're talking about for their wage right now, aren't we? I mean, it's only 10 people.
Right.
Okay, so knowing that.
There is some choice here for myself,
yeah,
being the city administrator.
Yeah.
Just because I have a couple of employees that rank in the 3 to 3.99 does not mean I'm obligated to give them a merit bonus. That just means that if I do, that total cannot exceed 2%. Does that make sense? It's a protection against abuse of the money, but it's not it's not an automatic reward to somebody. But I think if it makes it more comfortable by eliminating that 4% and the 5% and lumping those other two ranges together so it matches the first two ranges, I think that's perfectly fine. And then Susan, you did ask the question about how these numbers are determined. Just like we did with the current performance evaluations, that Chad, Dalton, and myself performed these as the supervisor, filled out these evaluations. And there are categories within each of the criteria. And at the end, you get the total of points possible, points earned, and you figure out the average score, and then that fits within the formula.
Okay, now that's for the rank and file folks, right?
That's where the rank and file.
That's for the non-directors.
No, that's for everybody, except for me.
Now, wait a minute. I think you said you sat down with Dalton and whoever else. And
yes, Dalton supervises staff, so he
right.
does perform the performance evaluations. He completes those,
right.
and then he presents those to me, and I sign off on them.
Right. But these merit pays are not for the rank and file people that he evaluates, is it?
The merit bonus is for non-union employees, all non-union employees except for me.
That's what I thought. So the other doesn't have anything to do with it, in my opinion. But, okay. Well, Dennis, tell me just as a quick review, because the things have kind of gone back and forth. So if they get an exceed rating, there is no bonus. No, if they get a meets rating, there's no bonus. Is that
more than likely the way this is going to work out is in this chart? If they're at the bottom of the end of meets performance, they're not going to get a merit bonus. But if they're above the minimum, then they're going to be considered, and that's why we want to keep that ranking or that range open to a possible merit bonus. And as I said, this all comes down to what the council actually allocates. The council during the budget process could say, we're not going to allocate any money for merit bonuses this year.
Okay, Dennis, if we cross off the bottom two, I'm a little bit concrete sequential, so bear with me.
Cross off the bottom two and change the ranges from 3 to 3.49 to 3 to 4. or 3.99, I'm sorry.
Okay, but the rating that they would get to get that 2% would be a what? And exceeds, or whatever you call it, excellent.
3 to 3.99.
Okay.
And they don't get a 2%.
That would
They
be
just
two-
can't get more than 2%. They could get 0%.
Okay, but what's their rating according to those 5 things you have?
Standard performance. It's the standard performance.
That's just the meets. I call it.
Right,
meets.
correct.
Okay. So you got them getting a bonus. And the next one is exceeds. I'm going to call it exceeds. To me, when you're talking about bonus, you got to exceed to get the bonus, in my view. That's just my head. Because you meet, I don't think that warrants, I mean, you're expected to meet.
Dennis, would you entertain, I think the ranges are, I like the more streamlined ranges, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. I actually would be okay with a 5+, but I actually would maybe start them, the performance raises at 2 at 4% and 3 at 5, not to exceed 5%. What does the rest of the council think about that?
You say that again, Teresa, please.
Sure. So take what Dennis proposed. You know, we have the 0 to 1.99, 2 to 2.99, 3 to 3.99. You did a 4 to 4.99, and then a 5 over 5 plus, and then you implemented the not to exceeds at 4.99 and over 5. So it takes that just meeting component out of that merit piece.
Well, Dennis was suggesting we cross out the last 2 levels, the 4 and 5 percenters.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting you have 4 and 5%. I'm suggesting you have 2 and 3%, but you do them at 4 to 4.99 and 5 and over, as opposed to 3 to 3.99 and 4 to 4.99.
So you want to have the 5 or 6 different summative evaluations versus simplifying it, as I think is wise to do. Not so many of these things. That's my opinion.
If I'm understanding you, so 3 to 3.99, not to exceed nothing. We are taking that away. The 4 to 4.99 would be not to exceed 2%. And then the 5+ would be not to exceed 3%. Is that correct?
If you're averaging scores and your maximum is 5, you're never going to get 5+, right? So then the other issue with the 3 to 3.99. So because that's an average, then there are going to be criteria that are used for measuring that could potentially be distinguished 5.0. And in the averaging, it comes down to say 3.4. So let's hypothesize here. Let's say an employee is just meets expectations every day, but during a fire call, a lieutenant takes it upon himself or herself to actually go to the scene and performs life-saving measures to save a person's life in the community. And Chad might want to reward that person for that heroic effort as a city employee to get a merit bonus of some type. So that would give the flexibility to do that. The other thing that I want to impress upon, I think everybody that is not getting enough credit here, is that I am a manager of staff here, and I don't just hand out money willy-nilly to everybody, whoever shows up to work. I also do demand a few things from the people that work for me, and I do ask them to perform in a very quality manner. And if they don't, I take steps as their manager and supervisor to adjust that. So this is not just a put your dime in the candy machine and hit that and get 10 Twix bars. There's some real work that goes into monitoring this and working with employees almost every single day to make sure that they're performing at their best level. So please understand that if it's at a 3.05, a good manager probably isn't going to go throw the bank at that employee.
Dennis, I like what you suggested in terms of knocking out the bottom two, because I think it's reasonable that you can differentiate those levels versus the two more levels.
I'm hopeful that what that would do is it would give the council a little bit more comfort zone fiscally, that this isn't going to get out of hand financially.
That too. So that's what I would suggest. It makes sense to me.
Mr. LaFredo, are you making a motion?
Yeah, I don't have a motion on the percentages, but yeah, I would make the motion that we just have the 4 levels and knock out the bottom 2. And then somebody else can make a motion on what they want for those percentages.
Did you pick up what he was saying?
I guess I would.
Go ahead, Teresa.
Could we make that in one motion?
Okay, let's do it in one motion. Just eliminate the bottom 2, and the 3 to 399 would be 2%, and the top one would be 3%.
I will second that.
And that, Dennis, that's saying up to 3%, right?
Yes, so the motion is to adopt this recommendation with adjustments to the chart on page 3, eliminating the 2 bottom not to exceed numbers with only 4, and the numbers are not to exceed 2 and 3. Is that correct?
That's the motion.
Okay, thank you.
And we've got a second. Any further discussion?
And then
I'd just like to add one more thing, because Dennis, your example was good. Somebody that's basically, it meets expectations and he goes out and saves a life. I think that you could move him up a notch, if the supervisor felt that way. So I think there's flexibility here.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Roll call.
So on the number 2, the merit bonus, then we would change that to not just at meets standard rating, correct? We would go through and change that on page number 1 to in the first paragraph.
Yes, I will change that to not meet standard in the number 2 section, but excellent performance and distinguished performance.
Okay. Thank you.
Travis, call roll.
Susan Skiris,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Have we approved the base rate for the next fiscal year yet?
No.
Not.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, on this last item with compensation, can I give a little introduction so the council can have a discussion and
Please.
see if there is a motion?
Please.
Okay, so hearkening back to the non-union wages for employees for fiscal year 22, council discussed the recommendation on May 17th for wage rates to be set in alignment with the Pontifex pay ranges. And hearing and listening to what the council's desire was for the actual wage rates, I heard that you wanted to be fiscally responsible. The amount of money devoted towards this has to be managed well. and has to fit within the council's desire to show appreciation and value the employees that are already working here. I also heard during that discussion the desire to at least entertain the idea of having a lump sum amount that the council would decide on, and then allow the city administrator to use that budgeted amount to determine wages for fiscal year 22, as well as the intention to add more PTO, holidays, and short-term disability. So what I've done is I have adjusted the recommended wages from the May 17th proposal. And what you see before you this evening are two options. The first option is reducing the first recommendation by an overall 11%. And you can see that these wages, as recommended here, are based on education, experience, and longevity with the city of Windsor Heights. And I've denoted that at the bottom, whether it's being placed at the minimum of the pay ranges, placement at the minimum plus, or placement at the midpoint, or placement at the midpoint plus. And you could see that reduced wage rate scale compared to the original was only $37,714 when the original was going to require an additional $49,000 be added to the budget, split between the general fund and the streets fund. Or option two, which would be a lump sum allocation for determining wages for fiscal year 22. That would be split between the general fund and the streets fund, $16,000 and $12,000, and would also use or include the addition of 24 hours of PTO, city fund short-term disability insurance, and 3 holidays, 1 for MLK Day and 2 floating holidays. That would be accomplished with the city council approving an additional $28,000 to those 2 budgets. Now, one issue that has been asked about is the sustainability of this financially with either of these options. And one thing I would like to point to today, I mean, Rochelle will answer your questions in more detail, but I'd like to point to an item that I sent to the council today, which is a Moody's Investor Service summary of the city. And I want to read a couple excerpts from that because I think this does, or it should, provide a little bit more comfort to the counselors who are worried about the impacts financially of this long term. Under finances, Moody's states the fund balance as a percent of operating revenues is 102.2%. It's far superior to the US median and saw an increase between 2017 and 2020. Also, Windsor Heights cash balance as a percent of operating revenues is far stronger than other Moody's rated cities nationwide. Now, the sentence I am focused on here is that the fund balance as a percent of operating revenues, which is our reserves, is far superior to the US median. That's one positive. But what speaks to the sustainability of these expenses is the second part of that sentence, which says saw an increase between 2017 and 2020. What that's basically saying is that our revenues are growing faster than our expenses over that period of time. And we expect that to continue as we are fiscally responsible for the entire budgets throughout the funds. And then further down on that report, under the management and governance section, it reads, even with property tax caps on general and emergency levies, cities have strong revenue raising flexibility due to various additional levies, including an unlimited levy for employee benefits. Unpredictable revenue fluctuations tend to be minor given the stability of the sector's primary revenue source, which are property taxes. So what this is basically saying is that cities that have this benefits fund, employee benefits fund, are very financially viable and sustainable because these benefits are being covered by a separate tax fund. And Rochelle can answer better the questions that you might have about that because she knows the ins and outs. But I just thought it was interesting that these 2 sections read from this independent financial firm seems to support the idea that the city of Windsor Heights' financial position is very strong and sustainable going forward into the future. And considering the amounts of money we're talking about to get these pay scales on track, it's very minuscule compared to the overall budget for the general fund and the streets fund. So if you have any questions on sustainability, Rochelle would be glad to answer those better than I can for sure.
Dennis, I just like to make this comment. I mean, we just got our properties reassessed, and there's significant increase, which brings in more tax dollars. And I think the previous one was only like 2 years ago, 2 years before that. And so they reassessed the properties way, in my opinion, pretty high. The county I'm speaking of, which, you know, affects us too. So, I mean, I don't know how long that can go on, where people can stay in their houses if they keep raising the assessed value of our properties. So that's just a side comment.
Well, if you read the Moody's report, you'll see there's a section that talks about how the Des Moines area, they expected the Des Moines area to grow substantially in the many few years.
Yeah, I think the Des Moines area will be. And I did read it, Dennis, that day.
I assume so.
Have we taken into account the loss of the backfill? And because I know that happens over a course of time, and maybe that's for the budget committee, but I'm assuming that that's about the same amount of money dollar wise that we'll be losing as far as the same cost of these increases. So I'm just curious if Rochelle has any insight or thought on that.
Sure. When we look at the backfill, you have to remember that the state, when we budget for it, they actually give us a dollar figure that they think they're going to backfill, or that they think they're going to give us. And we budget that dollar figure, but that dollar figure is not what they give us. So it's always a much lower percentage. Mm-hmm. So this year, for instance, we budgeted, I think it was like $107,000. And currently we've received $42,000. So I never rely on those numbers, and other financial directors will tell you the same thing. They do not rely on the backfill numbers, because what the state tells you they're going to give you and what you actually get are two completely different things. So the amount of money that we are going to lose over the next 6 years with the backfill, it actually won't have too much of an impact, based on the fact that our local option sales tax will increase incrementally and basically cover it. So I'm really not worried about the backfill at all.
Thank you, Rochelle.
Mm-hmm.
One thing on that note, I think, is an addition. I think, unlike a lot of bigger cities that rely on very high fluctuating revenue sources, like let's say tourism dollars, when you have a down market, you're drastically impacted by that. The city of Windsor Heights has done a good job to basically pin their hopes on these very solid revenue streams that are going to perform over time. And they're not going to fluctuate very much. They don't go up a lot, but they also don't go down a lot. And I think that we're in a good financial position because of that. Susan, did I accidentally interrupt you? If I did, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. Rochelle, how do we know that lost will be going up? I guess in that conversation, how are we sure that lost will go up?
Well, based on revenue projections by the state of Iowa, by the Department of Revenue, they give us estimates, and then even further than that, we look at economic impact, even what happened during COVID, which was that everyone thought lost would actually go down, and it actually increased. So those projections based on the Department of Revenue and other economic factors, that's how we make those long-term projections. Of course, anything could happen, just like, I mean, another pandemic could happen, but you have to make projections based on something. And I take those projections from the Department of Revenue, which they've got the really high paid people making all those decisions. So I feel very confident that we are having no issue with the backfill.
Thank you for your explanation.
Yeah, sure.
Any further comment on non-union employee compensation?
Mayor, I would like to say one other thing real quick,
Go
and
ahead,
it's
Michelle.
to do with the financial impact and sustainability of these, the salary ranges or the raises or whatever you want to call it. I did a 5-year study on a 5-year analysis on this, and I actually based it on Pontifex's minimums, putting us at the minimums, everybody that is non-union. And we actually are sustainable at least 5 years out, probably 7 to 10, based on just minimal increases in any sort of revenue. So I just want you to know that I am looking at that stuff, and it's not just from the perspective of, oh, I want to raise. It's from the perspective of, can we sustain this? And I'm not going to go into this and say, oh yeah, absolutely, because that would make me look like a fool. And I'm not going to do that for the city. I consider this like my funds. This is my money. And I don't want you guys to think that I would be irresponsible in any way, shape, or form with the city's funds.
Well, we would hope not, because I mean,
absolutely not.
The fiduciary role is your role.
Absolutely.
And so, and I certainly have trust in you and confidence, and so that's just speaking for one person, but yeah, that would be expected. And I think you live up to that.
Thank you.
Rochelle, would any of that come out of our, well, I'll just call it a savings fund for lack of a better term. Would any of this that you're talking about for the pay increases, would there be any amount of money coming out of our savings?
No. And Teresa alluded to it, I think at our last council meeting. She zero-sum budgets, and we as a city zero-sum budget. So the city gives me a pot or a bunch of money, a budget of money. I have to put all that money into certain pots. So I have to show where we're putting the money. So there is no way we would have to touch reserves in order to do these increases.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the big picture still, if we look at the total picture, is we've got pretty significant for this size city of a bond debt right now. Not that we can't handle it, but it's pretty significant for the size.
Right, and that's paid out of completely different funds than where this.
Whatever funds it is, I mean, it's still, it's taxpayer dollars. Correct?
Yes, it's taxpayer dollars. It all is.
Okay, and that's what it boils down to for me, is being guardians of the taxpayers' funds.
Travis, I think we got a motion in a second to make the approval with those changes. Am I correct?
I don't believe
We got a motion.
Yeah, who moved? No, there's no motion on the table yet.
Okay.
And are we looking at option 1 or option 2?
And what are the changes?
Well, I think
Motion
just
would
a
have
quick
to be-
question.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Teresa.
No, just a quick question. Remind me how much we initially budgeted. I know we've talked about this before, but I can't find my notes on that right now. What was in the original budget?
3.5%.
Yeah, but what was that dollar amount? What's in the budget?
3.5% would have been about 23.5.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So I would make a motion to accept option number 2.
Second.
Okay.
So we're talking, just so that we are all on the same page here, we're talking about a lump sum increase of 28,000 that Dennis will hand out and then 3 additional holidays, MLK Day, and then 2 floating holidays, along with 24 hours of PTO, and then short-term disability. Correct?
Can I just clarify the wording on that, though, Susan? Dennis is not going to hand it out. He's going to actually do some negotiating with the department heads. And
I meant it in general terms as I'm going.
No, I know. I'm just trying to be a little bit funny, but yeah, because he's got to base it on criteria.
I understood what you meant, Susan.
Yeah, I did too.
How much PTO is there already, Dennis?
It varies, Mike, on your years of service, but if you are, I think it's year 1 through 5, it's 2 weeks.
It's 5.85 hours per pay period from 1 to 5. And then it increases to a little over 6 hours, years 5 to 10. So you take those hours times 26 pay periods.
So in terms of, Travis is correct. He's using the earned rate, but in the city's personnel policies manual, a permanent full-time employee, 1st year through 5th year, earns 80 hours a year. And then when you get to your 6th to 10th year, you earn 120 hours per year, and it keeps going up through 20 years of service to 200 hours. So what we would be looking at adjusting in that 1st year, you would earn it at a rate of 104 hours per year for the first 5 years of your employment, which is basically 3 more days added on to the 2 weeks that you have.
Mike, I don't mean to jump in on you if you have something more to ask.
Just real quick. And so what is the dollar amount, or what is the cost of the short-term disability?
$6,000 for all employees.
Okay.
All non-union employees. Sorry.
And probably.
Well, wait a minute. Wait. I'm sorry, Mike. I don't mean to interrupt, but I don't want to say something that's wrong. Travis knows this backwards and forwards. Travis, can you tell me?
Yeah, it's including all employees. So it's all 29 to 30 full-time benefited employees.
Now, with this PTO, I'm not exactly sure how you work this. Is the 80 hours, is that sick and vacation, just all together PTO? And
Yes.
so that's accruing. So you don't have sick leave and you don't have vacation leave. You just have PTO and you take it.
Correct. And it's not like on July 1, everybody's going to get awarded 80 hours. Their accrual rate's going to change.
Right. I was just used to sick leave and vacation leave split up that we accrued at like 3.79 hours. So that's why I wanted to make sure that I understood the PTO was everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think there's some cost, there could be some cost associated with PTO too. Because there might be overtime and such.
That's why we wanted to temper that at 24 hours more, not go for a full week.
Yeah, well, I think that's wise. Okay, Travis, you got the motion in the second, and Dennis, you got the wording correct?
Yes.
Roll call.
Harms,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Susan Skiris,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
and Mike Jones.
Yes.
Mayor, could we go back to letter E and either give some direction or have one more consideration for that scale?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
So I would be interested in making a motion to accept it, and if folks aren't comfortable with this and want Dennis to bring it back for the next meeting, but could we look at 15% across the board, except for where you already had those at 15% or 85% of the context range, and move those down to 80% of the context range?
Which one are you looking at, Therese? Which item?
I'm looking at figure B on page 47 of the packet.
Okay. Let me turn to it.
If there's enough heads nodding, I will bring that back at the next meeting so you can see it before you say yes or no to it. Is that okay?
That's fine with me. I just didn't want that. We need to get this done, and it's only fair to our folks. And if we're not comfortable with this as it is today, we need at least Dennis to have some more direction, so that way we can get something approved so we can start moving forward.
So Teresa's motion is to, or suggestion is to adjust the pay ranges by 15%, not 10%. And the position that I had at 15 moves to 20. And then the position that I didn't want to touch at all.
Oh, I thought, never mind. I thought I was looking at two of those. I'll leave that to your discretion, Dennis, to keep it in line with the rest.
Dennis, I would like to see it at our next meeting when at least I'm a little fresher than I am now.
I already said I'd support 85%. I'm just one guy. But
Okay, Dennis, you got enough direction to bring it back?
I do.
Okay, do we need a motion to table it?
No, I'll just come back. I have it. I've got it.
Okay. All right, folks. Next item is council reports. Teresa, anything?
I would just, so we've excuse me, I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. Special Events Committee, we've met a couple of times since had the first movie. I'll let Susan speak more about all of that, because she's really the kingpin on that. But we've been meeting and making some progress, I think. Look forward to the next movie coming up on the 18th, and then also the 3rd of July. So appreciate both the foundation and the chamber, and we have a couple of new city residents involved as volunteers as well. So things are coming along on that front. And then we have the Metro Advisory Commission tomorrow morning as well. So we'll bring that back. Otherwise, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Go.
There was one last item on the agenda that was the letter from April Taylor Matthews.
Correct.
And this was sent to Susan, and Susan asked if it could be put on the agenda. Susan, do you want to?
Well, it's actually April Taylor Matthews is actually the employee with Moore Elementary that got in touch with me. Clarity is the person that wrote it, the student that wrote it. But she presented her concerns, Clarity presented her concerns about the property at 63rd and Hickman. And I definitely appreciate Clarity's desire and her ideas for a community garden. I would like to make sure that the city acknowledges Clarity's letter and responds to her with an answer to some of her questions about the property, as well as thank her for being an advocate at such a young age for the community garden, which she is very passionate about. If the city and city council, the mayor would kind of all maybe write something, or maybe have the mayor write something, I will work with Ms. Taylor Matthews to make sure that the letter gets to Clarity, since I believe Des Moines Public Schools is out on summer break right now.
Well, Susan,
We'll take care of it, Susan.
Would there be a possibility, Susan, that the developers that are just leaving the property sitting would go along with having a community garden there this year?
I would have no idea, maybe.
Well, I think that's something that could be asked. to follow up. It wouldn't be that hard, I don't think. They just.
Mike, in the process of sending a letter back, I'm sure that Dennis and I will probably contact her, check and see if that's even a feasibility item.
Well, they did, I think you should. I agree with that.
Well, thank you.
And I think Mike Jones brought up a good suggestion to look at Lions Park, since we don't really do much with it, that he suggested maybe doing a community garden there, or having some type of event or community flowers or something along those lines, to kind of back what Clarity said about 63rd and Hickman.
Yes, I'm sure we can look at that. Okay, Susan, have you got any other items to bring up?
Let's see. Movie in the Park was a little bit chilly on the 28th. We did have some troopers that came out to enjoy the free beverages, popcorn, and pizza. Thank you to the sponsors of the event: Mike Jones, HWCBD, Lauren Campbell Photography, Bolton and Mink, who is sponsoring basically, I believe, all of the movies, Windsor Heights Foundation, and Windsor Mower. Also a big thank you to the volunteers. Edie came out and helped. She left her Cubs game early, so we're happy about that. Barb Fatino and Judy Davis came out and they helped put the popcorn together and hand out pizza. So our next movie will be June 18th, and I believe that's Goonies. Going along with the special events committee, I believe we're still looking for 4 volunteers to help pick up garbage after the July 3rd Music in the Park event, following up with the fireworks, just kind of making sure that the park looks nice after the event. That's it.
Michael Freda,
Pass.
Mike Jones,
Nothing for me, Dave. Thank you.
Joseph Jones,
Nothing for me either, Dave.
Dennis, you got any closing remarks?
Just one item. Council member Joseph Jones did inquire about attending a conference in Washington, DC, the DMDC 2021. That will be in September. The city does budget funds for council members to go to trainings and things like this. And so I'm going to place this on the agenda for approval at, what's the next one? June 21st. I just wanted you to have a heads up. If council members didn't know that this was available, you also might be interested in some conferences or training sessions that might be coming up. Please let me know. That's it. Thank you.
Does anybody know if the league is having their conference this year and when it is, if so?
They are having their league. They have in person as well as virtual, because I just looked at it. It's in September, but I can't remember the date. I can get that to you because I have it in an email that I just read not too long ago. So.
And it's in Coralville this year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call.
Susan Skiris,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Thank you, folks. Been a productive evening. Look forward to doing the next one. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.